Okay, hello everybody. We are live once again. So I appreciate you guys for being here, or I appreciate you guys viewing it after the fact. But there is some big news in Montana football, not just Montana football, but Montana State football as well. Um, Eric, let me make sure I get the name right. Eric Sanders, the Eastern Washington defensive coordinator, is set to become the new DC on Bobby Kennedy's staff. What does this mean for the UM defense in 2026? Well, the numbers in 2024, Eric Sanders' defense gave up 36.17 points per game, and in 2025, his defense gave up 30.17 points per game. So improvement. A lot of people would also say that, from a talent standpoint, they weren't necessarily set up to succeed, as well as, a host of things at Eastern Washington. The resources are not very high at Eastern Washington. The talent level that they're getting at Eastern Washington is not very high, as well as, when you look at when you look at what the focus at Eastern Washington has been for some time now, it really seems like at Eastern Washington they are more focused on the offensive side of things as opposed to the defensive side of things. But nonetheless, it's very exciting that Montana is getting a defensive coordinator. Because they didn't have one. Bobby Houck left and he took a host of players, a host of coaches with him. His brother is going to be retiring. Roger Cooper just got announced as the inside linebackers coach at Illinois, as well as I think there's a couple other coaches on the staff that are no more as well. But Jalen Johnson, the new defensive coordinator on the Eastern Washington staff, the new not defensive coordinator, the new defensive line coach at Montana, was previously at Eastern Washington as their D line coach. He is coming over as well. When you look at I keep missing his last name. Eric Sanders. When you look at Coach Eric Sanders and what he has had on his staff, what players he has developed at Eastern Washington, he's had a few all-conference players. They had two all-conference players, first and second team all-conference players in 2025, and then in 2024 they had a couple other all-conference players on the second team, and then in 2025 they had a couple of honorable mention guys also. We will see what he can do with the resources that they have in Montana, with the talent that they're able to recruit at Montana. I think the most important thing that you need to do at Montana is recruit, man. You got to recruit. You got to get those good players in on the staff. You got to get those players in on your team. You got to get those players in the building, and that is most important. That is most important and should be at the top of everybody's mind when you think about what's going on in Montana right now. On the other side of the state, you also had a new defensive coordinator, not necessarily new, but Bobby Daly is coming back to Montana State after 1 year at UTEP. And it kind of sucks for Bobby Daly because he was gone for 1 year and then he comes back and all of a sudden they're national champions. So, he just missed it just by a year. If he would have stuck around, maybe they would have gotten over the hump. Obviously they lost a ton of talent, but they brought in Justin Lamson, and Justin Lamson was able to do some really good things. So this is exciting for both schools. When you look at Montana State, I don't think they're going to really miss. I mean, I can name off the numbers. They were number 11 in scoring defense at 18.3 points per game. So I honestly think that's a little better than where the Montana State defense was at in 2024. In 2025, number 15 in total defense, number 17 in third down conversion percentage defense, number 24 in rushing defense, number 27 in team passing efficiency. These are all of Bobby Daly's numbers as defensive coordinator in 2024. Number 31 in passing defense and number 35 in fumbles recovered at 8. But exciting for both schools. Defense wins championships. Obviously, in the national championship game, it was a lot of offense in that game. Illinois State put up points. Montana State put up points. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to play defense if you want to be good. So I think it's very exciting for both schools. I'm very interested because obviously the conversation when you go back to the other side with Montana, when you think of Eric Sanders, and you think about bringing in a coordinator from Eastern Washington, obviously the first thing people are going to think is like, oh my gosh, like, why are we bringing in a coordinator from Eastern Washington? They have never been able to stop anybody, which is, in my opinion, that is a very fair assessment. But also, like I mentioned, with the talent that you have at Montana opposed to the talent that you have at Eastern Washington, I think it's a little bit of a different situation. But if this is a scenario, and also too, another thing you got to consider is Bobby Kennedy is coming into the situation late. He's got to bring on players, so he's got to build a staff, kind of out of nowhere, especially with Coach Houck taking a bunch of the stat. Like, I think the expectation for Bobby Kennedy was, he said this in his press conference, is like, we're going to hold on to all of our coaches. We're going to keep the staff continuity going. I don't think staff continuity on the defensive side, it really matters in terms of being able to hang on to players, because I don't think they were returning a lot of players in the first place. Solomon Tuliaupupu is coming back, as well as Peyton Wing is coming back. But outside of that, like, they had some other players coming back, Cade Boyd, Cade Cutler, and some other younger players who played snaps as well. I'm not going to go off and name everybody. But from that standpoint, I don't know if that was a huge issue. Now you're bringing in a new staff. The biggest question is going to be, and historically, I don't think Eric Sanders has 3-3-5. I think that's the one thing that I think is clear now with bringing in Eric Sanders is, okay, the 3-3-5 is officially gone from Montana. Because with one thing that I was thinking about when Houck left, but the staff was staying, I was like, oh man, like, although Houck is leaving, the staff that ran the 3-3-5 is staying. So does that mean this 3-3-5 is still going to be in place? I don't think that's the case now. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what that looks like in 2025, because, from a recruiting standpoint, in my opinion, you've been recruiting to run the 3-3-5. So now that you're not going to be running the 3-3-5 and you're bringing in a whole new defensive coordinator, what does that look like? And also, how well can he implement his scheme throughout the spring? He's just getting here now in February. So how well is he going to be able to implement his scheme before the spring season gets here? Their start of winter conditioning. I think Frank Gagola released their schedule of what they're doing. And how well is he going to be able to implement his scheme before the season gets here? That's super, super important. And how well did the players attach to it? And, what is his coaching philosophy? How is Eric Sanders as a coach? Obviously, Coach Bobby Houck and coaches who coach for Bobby Houck, a little bit on the older side, but also, hard-nosed head coach where, you got to play hard. Pursuit drill is always a staple. I think we've been seeing a ton of social media from Coach Bobby Kennedy since he's been the head coach, and that's been very interesting to see. I think that's something that a lot of the fans at Montana have wanted to see for a long time. So to see them a little bit more active on social media, we'll see how it progresses over the years. But also, it's so funny, Houck leaves, and now he's doing one-on-ones with their head coach, and he's standing in front of their statue, the Dick Butkus statue at Illinois, and he's doing something on social. I don't think we would have ever seen that. I don't think we would have ever seen that from Bobby Houck at the University of Montana. So I'm very interested to see how it plays out at Illinois for Bobby Houck, and I'm very interested to see how it plays out at Montana for Eric Sanders, as well as Jalen Johnson on the D-line coach. What kind of influence will Jalen Johnson have on the recruiting? I think he's a coach who's on the younger side of things. I think that's something they've needed on the staff. So, like, what type of influence will that have on the type of players that they're able to bring in at Montana? What type of influence will that have on, the type of players they're able to get? Where will they be sending him to? Obviously, I believe he played at Washington, so obviously he probably knows that area. What will that look like? I mean, there's new changes coming at Montana. I think they're good changes, but there are definitely changes coming at Montana, which I think is what was needed at Montana. Like, I've said this multiple times when I've talked, and I think that there needed to be some wholesale changes. Say what you want about Bobby Houck. He had a phenomenal legacy at Montana, but I think it was time to change things, man. I think it was time to flip some things over. I think time to turn over a new leaf, and now we are where we are at. It's very, very exciting, and it's new. So we will see what he looks like. Skyline Sports also reported that Mike Linehan is set to join Bobby Houck's staff at Illinois. I know Roger Cooper was announced. I know Ronnie Bradford was announced on the staff at Illinois with Bobby Houck, but Mike Linehan, it seems, will be leaving as well. So couple of coaches leaving. Bobby Kennedy gets to recruit some of his coaching staff, which, may be good, may be bad. Who knows? I know continuity was the name of the game, but that doesn't seem to be the case so much on the defensive side of things anymore. I know I briefly mentioned Bobby Daly. The reason I didn't want to hang on to and talk too much about Bobby Daly is because, Bobby Daly, to me, with Montana State, whoever is coaching does not matter. Like, it doesn't matter who the head coach is. It does matter who the head coach is, but it does not matter who the defensive coordinator is. It doesn't even necessarily matter who the offensive coordinator is. Now, I do think their offense ran a little bit differently than it did in 2024. I think their offense passed the ball more, a lot more drop back pass. Obviously, the quarterback run was always going to be an integral part, and obviously the run game was going to be an integral part, and it was all going to start up front. But when you look at the defensive side of things, too high defense. the pieces aren't necessarily the key for me. Like whoever is in that defense isn't necessarily a key for me. To me, they are just incredibly sound, and they are going to be that as long as I believe Brent Vegan is there. So it's very, very, very exciting. It's very, very exciting. Another thing I wanted to talk about, and another thing I had queued up to talk about is Sac State. Sac State may be headed to the MAC conference, and man, like this has been in the works for a very, very long time. But negotiations between officials from Sacramento State and the MAC have intensified over an expansion agreement that is nearing a vote. Yahoo Sports. Sac State is offering an entry fee of more than $15 million. And Zach McKinnell even reported that that may be even $20 million. So one thing that was clear to me from this development is that Sac State is clearly they want to get to the FBS very, very bad. They've been wanting to be they've wanted to be at the FBS for a long time, but I mean the price, and that's another thing that is clear to me too about this report from Ross Dellinger, is that the price in order to be FBS has just risen. Like just the money that you need to have to be an FBS football team has risen. You know, it went from, I think NIU paid $2 million to go to to join the Mountain West Conference last year, and now you see NDSU has paid $17.5 million to be in the Mountain West Conference as a football only member, and then you see Sacramento State is willing to pay between $15 and $20 million to be in the MAC conference. Now, obviously, nothing is set in stone, but Ross Dellinger reports, in deep discussion with the California-based FCS school for more than a week now, MAC executives are reaching the point of a final decision on a move that would bring a windfall to current member schools. Sacramento State's entry fee is expected to be more than $15 million. The MAC has yet to release its 2026 conference schedule. The league loses Northern Illinois this coming year and added UMass last year to remain at 12 member schools. The conference also has upcoming negotiations with ESPN for its new television deal. So it seems like, the MAC is kind of holding off on releasing their schedule. It seems like the MAC is kind of holding off on signing a new deal until they have their conference in place. But this is exciting news for Sacramento State, exciting news for Dr. Luke Wood. I know they would love nothing more than to be in the FBS. But another thing with this potential move to the MAC that it brings up is the fact that the travel is going to be crazy for them. Like I don't even have, let me pull up the MAC conference and see who they have on affiliation. Give me just a second. Let me see who the MAC currently has in their conference and see where they would be traveling to. So I got sorry if I'm lagging, search things. Let me go football real quick. Football. Okay, let's look at it right here. This is from last year. Actually, no, let me go back and let me look at their site on the Mid-American Conference. Yeah, I know. It's not responding. Obviously, we're lagging a little bit. Hang in there with me. I'm looking it up right now, and I want to see who is in the standing. Okay, here we go. MAC Conference. So you got Western Michigan conference last year at 7-1. They were 10-4 overall. And then you got Ohio in that conference who were 9-4, 6-2 or 6-2 in the conference, 9-4 overall. You got Toledo, you got Miami. I'm not going to name everybody's record. Toledo, Miami, Central Michigan, Akron, Buffalo, Kent State, Ball State, Eastern Michigan, Bowling Green, Northern Illinois, and Massachusetts. So a ton of Ohio travel, a ton of Michigan travel. That's going to be big travel for Sacramento State, who's in Northern California. Let's see how many Michigan schools. One in Western Michigan, one in Central Michigan, one in Eastern Michigan. So 3 Michigan schools. And then you got Ohio, you got Toledo, you got Miami, you got Akron, Kent State. Where is Kent State? I don't know necessarily where Kent State is. I don't know necessarily where Ball State is at. Bowling Green, I believe, might be in Ohio, or is Bowling Green in Kentucky? Either way, a ton of travel to the northern Midwest schools. So that's going to be exciting and interesting travel for Sacramento State. Obviously, they still, and that would be something too. Imagine they take it to a vote with the Sacramento State, like with the MAC conf, because obviously if you've been keeping up with the Sacramento State, was taken to a vote for be in the for if they would be able to join FBS, and they got denied. Their waiver got denied, and clearly they didn't want Sacramento State to move up. Imagine if they're voting in the MAC about if they want them to move up to the to the MAC conference, and it gets denied again. Like, that would just be another hit to Dr. Lukewood and another hit to Sacramento State on this journey to be an FBS school. But it's seeming likely the dollars they're willing to pay. And I think that's the biggest thing, is they're willing to pay to play. And that's what it seems like you have to do at this time. At a time of financial stress for universities, most notably a low budget school, the low budget schools in the MAC, Sacramento State's proposal is attractive and lucrative. And I think that's why they're willing to pay the money. I think Sacramento State's first choice would have been the Mountain West Conference. They're going to take what they can get at this point. I mean, and is that, is that where they're at now? It's like, we want to be Mountain West. We want to be, it's so funny, because at first it was like, nah, we're going to be in the Pac-12. We want to be in the Pac-12. We want to be playing against some of the best schools. And then that was kind of went on the back burner. It's like, okay, no Pac-12. We want to be in the Mountain West Conference, and the Mountain West Conference adds NDSU. They add UC Davis as all their sports. And then their football team has, I think what the right term is, first right of refusal. And it seems since the Mountain West Conference is adding NDSU, maybe UC Davis was presented with an offer to join the Mountain West this offseason, and maybe they said no. But either way, the commissioner of the Mountain West Conference did come out and say NDSU was their number one target. So maybe that's not the case. Either way, maybe, they said we want to be Pac-12. That didn't happen. They said we want to be Mountain West. That didn't happen. So you just keep moving east and east, because obviously Pac-12 would be most ideal for their travel. And then, well, not necessarily now with the new Pac-12, but Pac-12 will be most ideal with their travel. Then the Mountain West would be the second best with their travel. The MAC, if the MAC doesn't work out, do they go Sun Belt? Do they go Conference USA? I mean, what happens? But I think the main point is that Sacramento State is seeming like they might get their wishes of being a FBS school. There's going to be a vote. It's nearing a vote. So we will see what that looks like. But you guys let me know in the comment section what you guys think. I didn't have the chat pulled up. Let me see what the chat is talking about real quick before I necessarily move on, because I don't want to leave anybody hanging in the chat. I don't think there's been too many people on here. This has been, there's nothing in the chat, which there shouldn't have been. This is a 4 o'clock live on Friday, 4:30 live on Friday. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I will catch you guys next time. See you later.